as we're moving along. So hello, everyone. Welcome to our BCDR webinar. Here at EBI, we partner to solve real IT problems with the right technology. We're going to talk about some exciting things today. I'm going to give you information that you need to feel 100% confident that your information is backed up and possible downtime is reduced or eliminated. Downtime is bad. Not only that, we're going to talk about ways to keep your business going, even in the event of a major natural disaster. So, as many of you know, we've been around for about 17 years, a little over 17 years, and we have a great team of vendors with engineers, administrative staff, and a nationwide network of field service technicians. We also have on this call today Natalia, who is our BDR, Business Development Representative. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I have you on this webinar. First, we're going to define some terms. Second, how most people view protection. Third, what to be afraid of. Fourth, what's needed. Fifth, automation. And sixth, what does I got this look like? And I forgot to silence my phone, so I apologize for that. How many people have lost one day's worth of work because of some system crash, glitch, or some other human error? And how did that make you feel? Not too fun, was it? I'm going to prove this statement by the end of this presentation. Information loss is 100% preventable.
We're a corporate and social catering company to Fairfield and Westchester County. We cater for a lot of corporations in Stamford. We run cafeterias in office buildings. A few months ago, came in the morning and we're having some tweaky issues. Luckily, I'm in by 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and next person in was in at 7, mentioned something about her computer, and I noticed it too. Called US Computer Connections immediately.
So we find out that David's server had CryptoLocker, and we found out because one of the employees here wasn't able to access certain files. So I identified that pretty quickly on. We were able to shut down the user's computer and see what the damage was on the server.
The loss from a production and data standpoint, I don't even know if I could put a number on it, but $30,000, $40,000 easy.
Luckily, they implemented a data on their network. We were able to identify which files and folders were encrypted, and instead of paying the ransom, which is what they requested, we were able to restore the files, get them back up and running in under an hour.
We experienced no data loss, which blew me away.
A good backup system is the most important thing that you can put in the business. Without the proper backup, you are so vulnerable to not only viruses, but to potential hacking, or if someone physically steals your server. With the proper backup solution, you can be up and running in a very short period of time.
So I hope that video drives forward the point that the proper system will allow you to be 100% confident that you will have everything covered. So now I'm going to define some terms. Business continuity is the ability to keep your business functional. That's staying up and running in the aftermath of an extreme event like a hurricane or fire, or even a major human failure. Backup is copying your data to a safe medium for recovery in the event of data loss. And disaster recovery is the ability to eventually get your business back online. What most small businesses do for backup. Now, I'm not going to read through this entire slide, but I'm ashamed to say that a lot of small businesses have no means of backup. They basically think that their information isn't important and that they don't need to make sure that everything is copied in multiple locations so that in the event of failure or loss, they can just go back to work. Consider this, the dangerous point of your data, having your data, is it not necessarily losing all your data, but the amount of time it takes to get it back and get everything back to normal. So disasters can and do happen. Let's talk about what you need to have in place for a fast recovery. So I bring to you Michael DePalma. He works with Datto. He has a brand new shiny title, Director of Business Development in North America. And I'm going to stop my sharing and hand it over to Mike. Mike, it's all yours.
All right, Keith, thank you so much. Let me share my screen. So my name is Mike DePalma. I'm the Director of Business Development for North America for Datto. So we're a business continuity provider based up in Norwalk, Connecticut. So we're about 10 miles from that story that was told in that video there. My job's a little bit unique in that, I'm on the sales team or on the marketing team. My job is really just to go around and do these educational webinars. I've been fortunate to do a bunch of them with Keith, so appreciate you including us again here. But when we think about backup, a lot of times it's this commodity that you go out and buy, and here it is. Here's my second copy of my data. Backup's been going on since the existence of data, right? There's always been floppy disks or tape or whatever that might be. And a lot of times it's not really put into the context of my security. It's kind of the last line of defense, but really it needs to be part of an overall security plan, because security has gotten very complex to that point of it not being a commodity. There are multiple layers that start obviously on the protection side, but all the way through to detecting an attack has occurred, to responding to that attack, and then ultimately to responding in terms of getting that data back and recovered. And we saw a huge uptick. The problem with these criminals are that they're very opportunistic, and they were ready to seize on the pandemic from day one. We saw emails going out, look like they came from the World Health Organization and all the rest. And then we saw some shifts in terms of, well, where did they focus in 2020? Well, they hit the healthcare industry because there was a lot of pressure on there. They shifted last year and they really put some emphasis on the manufacturing industry because they know about the supply chain issues. They're going to look for that low-hanging fruit. And the problem is, we see these kind of sensational stories, the pipeline that was hit, U.S. government, all the rest. But the vast majority of attacks are happening at the small to medium-sized business level. That's where there's all this low-hanging fruit, because at the end of the day, these are business people. So yeah, they could spend a lot of time trying to get that big 7-figure payout, and they can be successful, but they know that that's going to be a lot harder and a lot more time-consuming. Or they could just attack thousands of businesses every single day, knowing that A, they're going to have a higher success rate of getting through, but B, have a higher success rate of actually getting paid, because businesses can't absorb that kind of downtime that Keith was talking about. And ransomware still is king at this point. They don't really need to change their business model. It's working. Usually it comes in through a phishing email, something like that with a malicious attachment or hyperlink within that. And they know it's going to be a banner year. We run a ransom report every year. We run it from July 1st to June 30th. So the numbers are coming in for the last 12 months. And we know it's going to be a banner year for the criminals. I actually was at a conference and heard a stat that the cyber crime space would be the 9th largest economy in the world, ahead of Canada and Brazil. That's how much money is being made. And again, think about it. Most of it's coming through $10,000 ask the small business community. And the remote kind of work from anywhere environment, which was great, it allowed us to stay up and running as an economy, is again leaving us more vulnerable. And so we see that uptick. The problem with our study And about 3 in 10 of business owners are highly concerned about this. That's why it's great that Keith continues to put out these educational webinars, because that's the way we win this fight. We don't win this fight by just buying a product and putting it in. I would love to say, hey, go buy a Datto and you're completely safe. It is one piece of an entire layer of, multi-layered approach to winning this fight. And when you look at that downtime, we talked about, they talked about in that video there, within our studies, the average length of downtime, the time it takes for a small business to get completely up and running after an attack, is about 20 days. So put that in the context, because you could see numbers about, hey, the average ransomware attack cost a business $1.5 million or whatever that is. And those are, I'm not saying they're theoretical numbers, they're real numbers, but it's hard to apply to your particular business. But you can look at the fact that, hey, can I be down for 20 days? Keith mentioned losing 1 day's worth of data. Imagine not having access for 20 days. How many businesses can survive something like that? And, within our studies, we show it's, you could do the math. We have a calculator where you can do the math. I'm on average about, business loses about 8K per hour that they're down. It's going to depend on how big you are, the industry you're in, how transactional, but you could start to do this math. I'll give you a little trick. It's just a math trick, but it's essentially 500,000 minutes in a year. So if you're $1 million revenue, that means you're generating about $2 in revenue per minute. So put that in the context as you're putting your IT budget together. That's the ultimate revenue baseline that you're going to be losing every single minute that you're down, beyond the bigger picture of losing potential clients, losing prospects, and all the rest, the reputation hit. So, when we look at what's happening right now in the small to medium-sized business space, it is a daunting task. A lot of times you see an attack on the U.S. government and you fall into two buckets. One is, well, hey, they're not attacking me. That's where they're going. They're going after the big boys. Or you throw your hands up in the air and say, hey, look, what chance do I have as a small business, a small office to absorb something like this? But in every one of these attacks, you can point to where that gap was that could have been filled. In the case of the pipeline, it literally was just password protection. There was no password management there, and somebody wasn't using multi-factor authentication. They found that weak link. It's normally not that the technology fails. It's that somebody makes a mistake, most of the time inadvertently, because they haven't been trained, because the processes weren't in place to make sure everybody knew exactly what they needed to have happen. I mentioned the surge in supply chain attacks. They're going to find that weakness, but the bigger picture, when you take a step back, is every single business is vulnerable to these attacks. Because with ransomware, kind of the genius business model behind it is, it doesn't matter if your data isn't valuable for them to go sell on the dark web. What is important is that they know that you can't operate without it. We live in the digital age right now. You cannot operate without access to that data. So it doesn't matter if you're a one-person nonprofit or the Colonial Pipeline. They know that you can't absorb 20 days without having access to that data, and that's why so many people pay. So, as we kind of, I'm going backwards here, sorry about that. But we know right now, this is a huge spend. There's $40 billion will be spent. The question is, where do you spend it? Where does this money go? Because I do see a lot of businesses that say, come out of a webinar like this and say, okay, Keith, what do I need to buy? That is not where you start. You do not start with saying, okay, I have a budget, what can I go buy? And so the conversation has really changed from cybersecurity to what we call cyber resilience. And what this really means is, look, we're going to put all these protections in place to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure the attacks don't get through. But if they do get through, what happens next? We follow the NIST framework at Datto. Pick a framework. They all kind of result in the same piece, but I would say define what your cyber resiliency platform is that you use. And basically what this would say is, coming out of this webinar, your first step should take a step back and go and do an assessment. Have Keith come in, do an assessment, take a look at where all your data lives. There's this new kind of, we call it shadow IT, where a lot of businesses don't realize that other departments are using these SaaS applications that have valuable data that nobody knows who has admin access. So just take an inventory of where all your physical devices live, where all the data lives, who has access to that data. We don't want people just giving carte blanche access to admin access to everybody. Criminals love that because now they can get their hands into everything. So that's this first step, because every plan is different. There's not a cookie cutter approach to this. So from there, Keith and his team puts together a plan. Okay, how are we going to protect all these assets? We'll put in multi-factor authentication, and where's all the data being backed up, and all the rest. And there, now you have a good cyber security plan. But the question is, what happens when one of these attacks gets through? Because again, most of the time it's coming through user error. So somebody sneaks in there. How quickly are we able to detect that? Because these criminals don't necessarily get in and detonate a ransomware attack. What they want to do is they want to get their hands into everything. First thing they're going to do is try to attack the backup. So they want to get their hands into everything that they can have access to. It goes back to not giving everybody admin access, right? So detection is critical. The speed in which you can detect these attacks allows you to go and respond to this attack. How are you isolating that machine? How are you going to do some forensics on that? But ultimately, the goal is that recovery piece. You want to be able to close it. Right now, like I said, on average, it's about 20 days for this cycle to go all the way through before recovery. That's the average amount of time. That's unacceptable. There are ways where you could now turn one of these attacks into what's essentially, an inconvenience of a couple of phone calls, as opposed to a business-threatening event that might, force you to close your doors. The other way to look at it, I think it's a little bit easier visually to look at it, is kind of on a linear basis. And so basically the new kind of term in our industry, and people are starting to understand a little bit more, is right-hand side of the boom. The boom being typically an attack, but I did a webinar last week for a partner down in the Caribbean, and we did it around hurricane season. That boom is any sort of event that's going to disrupt your business. So the left-hand side of the boom, that's where you're doing the identification and you're putting the protections plans. Unfortunately, a lot of businesses kind of stop there. And the real question is, what happens after the boom? This is where that race against time really starts. Who's detecting that that attack occurred? Who's monitoring your systems at all times, right? And then who's responding to that? Because at the same time, the criminals are doing what they have to do on the business side. They're doing reconnaissance. There's so much data available out there. Go to my LinkedIn page. You're going to know where I went to school, previous employers, all of those things. So if they wanted to attack me, it's going to be a very targeted attack. I could tell you firsthand, we were acquired a few months back, and I got a text message from which looked like the CEO of Datto, who I deal with pretty regularly, and it was, give me an immediate call. The number wasn't in my phone. It seemed suspicious. I didn't go respond to it. I slacked his EA, and she said, no, this is a malicious attack. But it shows you how opportunistic. They did research that, yeah, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for me to get a text from Tim Weller. And so I'm sure they were doing that to other folks, director level folks that trying to do that. So they're doing all that reconnaissance. Then they're delivering it and they're executing it and they're weaponizing it. And now they're in, and they could go in a lot of different directions. They could just try to get the fast money grab, hit you with ransomware. They could try and see what other systems you have, try to actually extract the data. This is where your cyber resilience really comes into play. So you have the technology, the processes in place, but it's that full holistic plan that really is going to win this fight. And ultimately, we're looking again at that right-hand side of the boom saying, how much downtime can I absorb? And am I meeting that goal? We call it the recovery time objective. The left-hand side of the screen, your recovery point objective, that's a simple question to answer. How much data am I at risk of losing? Is it a day's worth of data? It means I'm taking a daily backup. That could be fine. Everybody's different. For most, it needs to be more regular, maybe hourly or 4 times a day or 15 minutes, whatever that is. But ultimately, if you're putting together an incident response plan, a cyber resiliency plan, you need to define that. Here's what especially if you're going to get cyber insurance, they're going to want to see that, and you have to document that. They are deeming a lot of businesses uninsurable. And I'll tell you, as an exercise, even if you're not in the market, I know cyber insurance is expensive. Go through the exercise of filling out one of those applications, because if it comes back and they say, nope, unfortunately, you're uninsurable, that should be a big red flag, even if you're not in the market for it. It should be scary for you to know that an insurance company will not insure you. That's the time you need to start filling in some of those gaps. But the right-hand side of the screen, your recovery time objective is, how much downtime would I incur? Is that RTO star 20 days? Is it 20 hours? Is it, where do we fit? And then are we meeting that goal? And that needs to be in your plan, and you need to have a realistic expectation of that. So what this means in terms of continuity operation and where that fits into cyber resiliency, again, it's a mindset shift. For the most part, businesses, if they are attacked, their first reaction is, hey, I got to hopefully call my managed service provider, or if I have an internal IT team, we got to go order a new piece of hardware. Good luck with that, getting with supply chain issues. And then, all right, now we got to restore the data. In the meantime, for the office, it's a snow day. Nobody has access to anything, right? The mindset shift here with cyber resiliency is, no, your first reaction is to say, I have to get my entire team back up and running into a production environment. So what this does is, instead of just looking at files and folders like traditional backup does, it takes a full image of that server or even that critical workstation. So it captures all the volumes, but it also captures the applications, the operating system. Everything that lives there is going to be mirrored over to, in the case of Datto, you'll have an on-premise device right there in your office. And then we also have 2 data centers, one in Pennsylvania and one out in Utah. So you've got that geo-redundancy. Following that 3-2-1 model, 3 copies of your data, 2 different formats, 1 being off-site. We actually have 3-2-2. So now you've got those full copies, and it gives you the ability to do a couple of things. Once you take that full base image, and it could be very large, you're going to set up a schedule. You're going to sit down and say, what's my RPO goal? It's going to be hourly. Great. I'm going to set up my scheduled backups. They're all going to be tested. That offsite sync is going to be tested. You're meeting that goal. But what it gives you the ability to do is it creates actually what's called an inverse chain, meaning instead of being layered upon previous backups, like most traditional backups are, these are all independent instances in time. So if you get hit right now, you get hit at 11 o'clock, you know that you could roll back to that 10 o'clock backup, and there's no risk of it being impacted by that attack. The other thing it does on the detection side is it's able to detect ransomware as it's occurring. Because what's happening is these backups are going along, the data changes are relatively similar, and then all of a sudden ransomware hits and every single file and folder changes. Well, that's going to jump off the screen. It's not looking for individual variants because it's very hard to keep up with those, but they all leave the same footprint. So this is going to now flag this and say, hey, Keith, this looks like every other ransomware attack that we've seen. Should go in and do some forensics on this. And oh, by the way, here's your last clean backup. But ultimately, the goal here, again, keep your business up and running. What this gives you the ability to do is, okay, so now Jim down the hall clicks on an email he's not supposed to, right? Hopefully he knows the process. What do I have to do? Your first phone call isn't, again, to start that restoration. It's to get your business up and running. So what this gives you the ability to do is actually spin up what's called a virtual instance of that server. This will be operating as your server. Everybody who had access to that impacted server will now essentially fail over to this and continue to operate business as usual. And you could be in this state for several hours, days, weeks even, while a new server is being ordered, or that one's being wiped clean, and you're doing some forensics on that. It's just taking active backups while you're in this state. It's truly business as usual. And a lot of times when it's happening at the local level, the folks within your office won't even know it occurred. They will just be operating with access to everything. So now you've taken away a lot of the leverage that the criminals have, right? You're now reducing this again into an inconvenience as opposed to a business-threatening event. You're literally reducing this to a matter of minutes or hours as opposed to days or weeks or 20 days. And there are real-life stories out there. There was a very unfortunate story a couple weeks back. There was a college in Illinois. I don't know if you heard this story, Keith, but had been around for 157 years. They got hit with ransomware. Small college, 800 enrollment. They got hit with ransomware during enrollment season in December. It took them 3 months to get all their systems back up online. And by the time they did, enrollment had dwindled to the point that they closed their doors. 157 years. So it wasn't the fact that they were not ever going to get their data back. It was the speed in which they can do that. Their cyber resiliency plan was not in place. They had not looked, didn't have that forward thinking piece. So what this is doing is reducing that downtime, because again, that's the cost. That's where you have to take a look at yourself and say, how much downtime can I realistically absorb before it starts really impacting my business? You're ultimately going to be able to answer those RTO and OPO goals, because not only the backups tested, these cool virtualization capabilities, they're tested every single night as well. Brought up to a boot screen, a snapshot is taken of it with the timestamp. That goes a long way, even if we're talking about that insurance piece or any sort of regulatory piece, to be able to slide that documentation over and say, I'm not just checking off this box, saying, yes, I'm meeting this compliance issue. I'm actually testing it to make sure that I know exactly why it exists and that we can respond to that. And then ultimately you could do that either locally or from either one of those data centers that I mentioned. If there is some sort of natural disaster and that on-premise device is impacted, same exact capabilities from either one of those data centers. And it's data centers that we manage. We actually protect over an exabyte of data. It's one of the largest private data center networks. So we're not looking at third party. They are designed for these types of recoveries and these types of virtualizations. And so ultimately that's how we win this fight, because if you're able to get back up and running, there really is no reason to pay the ransom. Because now you could just, okay, well, we'll just wait and we'll get that data back. You can encrypt that data. I know I can get it back. And while I'm waiting to get that back, my business is up and running. So that's really how we win this fight. I know, Keith, you probably got some more thoughts on it. So I'll stop sharing and we can kind of wrap things up and obviously answer any questions. But hopefully this was helpful.
Thank you, Mike. Let me go back to my screen. Okay. I'm sitting here after listening to Mike's information, wondering why this webinar isn't full, 500 people sitting in here, because it just seems to me that a lot of business decision makers find no value in this information. And that's frustrating. That is extremely frustrating. So those of you that are in this webinar, I wish that you would get out there and talk to your contacts and your business decision makers and let them know that these are real issues. This is not something to just gloss over and not care about. There's my little public service announcement. It's just frustrating when we have so few here, 19 registered out of 300 to 400 people invited. Now, what Mike is talking about is what a lot of you might have heard of as a NAS. And I'm a computer geek, so I might be throwing out some words, and Mike might have thrown out some words that a lot of you may not understand, but I'm going to try to break it down as simply as possible. There's a device on most of our backups locations that's a box that's basically acts as the NAS, the network assisted storage. It's basically housing all of the information that it collects from the server and from all of the computers. It's basically the hub of the operation or the business. And it takes this information and it also sends it out to, as Mike said, to offsite storage locations. So your information is in multiple locations. And as he mentioned in his information, that all of these machines can be virtualized in the cloud. So you can have a cloud instance of your server or any of these desktops, both using the NAS, the device in your business, or in the cloud using the cloud storage to, not instantly, because it takes a little bit of time, maybe 5-10 minutes, to bring that whole machine back up and running in minutes, not 20 days. This is very exciting technology. As a geek, I really get excited about the ability to put this perfume on all of that stink and make the stink go away. Anyway, what's so powerful about data, and we looked at a bunch of different solutions, and we chose this one because it's really hard to hit this price point and really hard to bring this technology to you at a price point that's affordable to anyone, any small business, and even individual computer owners using cloud continuity for PC. So the price is affordable for all small businesses, not just the big ones and the ones with a lot of information. Like I said, what makes this powerful is virtualization, so that you can actually virtualize your machines in minutes, not hours. And it also keeps everything both on-site and off-site. So again, it's affordable to individuals and any small business, and even up to cities, city infrastructure. We can work with large, extremely large companies as a co-managed solution provider for them. So Mike kind of alluded to this. I'm going to do a really quick exercise with you. How many days are there in a year? 365. How many hours are there in a day? 24. How many minutes in an hour? 60. So I'm going to give you a magic number. 525,600 minutes in a year. So let's abbreviate that to 500,000. Now, how much money did your enterprise, your company, gross in the last year? You take that number and you divide it by 500,000. And that's an easy way to find out how much money your company made per minute in the year. Simple math, kind of like cowboy math, but it'll give you a good number. The cost of downtime. I'm going to put a link in the chat, which will take you to, let me go ahead and share that on the other screen. This is a link that will take you to a place where you can calculate your downtime. And Mike has another link that he can put in the chat for how to do that using data tools. That would be helpful also. So let me go ahead and drop that in there. That'll take you to this article.
Yeah, but I'm going to put that calculator link. It's open source. You can go and play around with it.
Mm-hmm. So as he said earlier, the cost of downtime could cost you as much as $5,600 a day. If you're a $2 million company, that's you take the $2 million and you divide it by 500,000, and that'll give you a grand total of $4 per minute. And in Mike's example, he used a $1 million company. That was $2 a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're bringing to you are opportunities to eliminate a lot of the downtime and the data loss at a image level. So if you wanted to protect a single desktop, there's the number right there. It's like, I don't even know how to calculate that little of a penny to protect your information per minute. The device is, the software is called Cloud Continuity for PC. And if you buy it through us, it's $24.95 a month. I mean, really small amount of money. If you're protecting a 1 terabyte or less device, that's even still less than a penny per minute. And as we mentioned earlier, that's, I mean, if you're a $1 million company, that's $2 a minute for your data. To pay fraction of a penny for a minute, quite affordable. So Data Alto started around $103 a month. The Cirrus device is right around a penny a minute, starting around $130 a month. So the question is, who wouldn't spend 1 cent per minute to protect $4 per minute? I just don't understand why I can't get more folks into these webinars so that they can learn what they need to have in place. So, as the old saying goes, to plan a journey, you have to know the starting point. And our free business continuity and data recovery assessment will get you that baseline. Something I'd like to say to you is, as I say inside of our company, if you got a guy, that's great. But if you let your guy grade his own homework, that might not be so great. Have somebody, a third party, someone come in and take a look at what they're doing, and they'll give you, we will give you a report for free that you can take back to your guy and say, hey, why is this happening? Or how do we fix this? Or how do we patch this? Or how do we make this not be a problem for us? This normally costs $540, but we're giving it to you for free. And again, I forget to change the date here. It's the end of this month. It's July the 31st. So I would love to give you this free data recovery assessment, a $540 value for free until July the 31st. So I'm going to give you some pictures here. I'm going to give you an example. This is the city of Nashville. And a while back, they had a major flood. So this is what a major flood looks like. And we're at the mouth of the James River. This could happen to us, folks. I know it's easier to just cover your head in sand and say, it'll never happen to me, but it can happen. So these are some pictures of the devastation that a major flood happened to a major city. As you can see, the water levels. Yeah, this was a horrible event for the city of Nashville. And I'm just going to click through these because it can happen. And how would you like to come to work someday and work looks like this? But with these devices, we can go up the road to Richmond, or we can go over to a higher lying ground, plug in to a network, and get right back to work and not lose months, days, months of revenue with your business being closed while you're suffering through this disaster. Our next steps, like I said, a $540 value, takes about 4 hours to accomplish this, and the offer ends on the 31st of July. Are there any questions? I don't see any questions in chat, and I don't see any questions in Q&A. Mike, do you have any closing words?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, the first step is definitely this assessment. If anybody that's going to try to present to you a business continuity, cyber resiliency plan without having that first step is not doing you a service. So you need to really understand, because everybody on this webinar and everyone that's going to watch the recording is going to have a different holistic plan. And so, we see those numbers. Just have somebody come in, have Keith come in. At a minimum, you might be completely protected. You might be completely fine. But that second set of eyes, I can't encourage that enough. Before you start talking about what I need to buy, what I need to do, find out, because it's going to be different. You're going to find things that you didn't know you needed every single time.
And my final thoughts are, as far as cybersecurity is concerned, this is just a piece of the big picture. Backup and recovery is it's a step in a process that could be as many as 50 steps to make sure that you're completely protected. But this is the most critical, in my opinion, step that you absolutely must have in place. I have a question from Shanika Selby of Selby Bookkeeping. How do I convince restaurant owners that they need this service? Mike? That was a restaurateur, you saw the video. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is an easy one, because you think about lost revenue that you'll never get back. It's not, if you're a car dealership and you're down for a day, somebody might come back and buy that car. If you're a restaurant and you're closed, you lost the sale on that fish sandwich or whatever it's going to be, right? You're never going to get that back. And again, especially in the restaurant industry, perception is everything. A lot of times, first impressions. You go to a restaurant and it's closed, at a busy time. You're trying to have a work lunch or something like that, and it is closed. Not only did you lose that sale, you might have lost that customer going forward. So the restaurant industry is actually one that really needs this, because downtime for a restaurant, again, is money they're never going to get back. And there's a lot of restaurant choices. You don't want to be the one that happens to be down for 20 days. Restaurants cannot absorb something like that. Not ones that I know. Maybe the chains. I don't know.
Yeah. Shanika, does this answer your question? I'm going to go ahead and open up your mic, unless you prefer or not. Okay, your mic is open. Oh, you're breaking up. Okay. You were breaking up. Go ahead. Shanika, are you there? Go ahead, and if you have any further follow-up, you're breaking up real bad on the if there are any follow-ups, go ahead and put them in chat or in Q&A.
And I'll say to that too, when I talk about those criminals being opportunistic, they hit at smart times. If you're an Irish pub, they will hit you on St. Patrick's Day. You know what I mean? They usually like to hit around holidays. They like to hit on a Friday, where maybe people are not monitoring. We saw that big attack last year. It happened the Friday before 4th of July weekend. So they will pinpoint, when to attack. So the timing of it is good too. They're going to know busy time, and that's going to hit you, because as a restaurant, that's when they pay, because they can't be down for a busy weekend. It's, again, thousands of dollars and never get back.
Yep, not a holiday weekend. Are there any other, I mean, we still have another 20 minutes of time. If there are no other questions, then I will return 20 minutes of your day to you. Again, this video will be available on demand off of our website. So we look forward to hearing from you. Natalia will reach out to all registrants and provide you with the on-demand link. Thank you very much for your time, Mike. Thank you very much for your time. And
Thanks for having me. Anytime.
Yes, sir. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
All right. Thanks, Keith. Bye.
Bye-bye.